Uh-oh. Hello, everybody. Come on in. Let me adjust my camera. I think that's good. Crack my windows because it's hot in here. Hi, who was that just joined? I missed you. I didn't see who it was. Let's see. I'm waiting for people to come on into the room. Thank you all so much for joining me as I just do a really quick scope. I just kind of want to talk about healing from your past real quick. I'm hoping it's not too deep, just because I don't want to be crying. And it's just a lot to do and just kind of get out real quick. But I wanted to say, invite your followers. Click on the little man at the bottom right. Invite your followers. Share if something resonates with you. Tap your screen and give me some heart love. But I wanted to say, first, let me introduce myself. I'm Kiana Shaw, CEO of Leadership Academy and the Executive Director of Village of Truth. And I am I'm your go-to person for all things teenagers. I'm a prevention and early intervention specialist for teenagers, teenage issues, and I help parents communicate with their teens. That being said, I want to talk about healing from our past. A lot of us are holding on to things that, and maybe not holding on. Some of us just can't get rid of some stuff, right? And I was just listening to a call that my business coach, April, did. You can follow her, Epic April. And she wrapped up a film last week that she has been doing with, it's executive produced by Nikki Woods. You can follow her at Nikki Woods. And she did a call about it on a weekly accountability call, and she just kind of let us in and be in that space with her. She was very emotional. She had this major breakdown, and she talked about, one of the ladies on the call, Rhonda, said that that the scene was so real that she could feel it from the living room, right? She wasn't even in there with the final scene. And it's, it talks about April's rape experience 20 years ago. And in that, it was just a really emotional thing. It was a really harsh thing. And so April said that she was in that scene, she's picking the lady up, or saving herself in that scene. She plays the aunt, who is not a character that was actually there at the time, but it's a character in the movie. And she says she's picking herself out of the tub or wherever it was, like saving herself, right? The character that's playing her. And she realized in that moment that she was responsible for saving herself even back then. And I want to say that so often we are holding on to things that we really, it's hard to say we should let go. It's hard to say that, we should just get over stuff. And I hear people say that to people all the time. Get over it. It happened a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And they say that, hi, how you doing, C Elbow? They say that even in grieving. Like I've heard people tell people, your son died 3 years ago. You have to get over it. And it's such an insensitive thing to say to people, whether it's about death and understand, like, some people have just been, physically beaten and sexually abused, and, there's still a death that happens to a degree, even in those moments. And we need to really take some time to heal from our past relationships. If it's past heartbreak, you've been divorced, sexual abuse, beaten by your parents. Some of us have been told that we are nothing. Some of us have been told that we just, for lack of a better term, just ain't ish, by the very people who are supposed to give us life and who are supposed to do everything for us, as far as nurturing us and giving us, the love that we need. And some of us did not have that. That's so true. Even if it's 20 years ago, there are scars and there are scar push-ups. Exactly. And so we really need to be conscious of taking some time to deal with our stuff. And I hear people say get over it, but nobody ever really gives a process to getting over it. People just think that it just magically happens. Oh, you just have to stop thinking about it. Let me tell you guys something. I was sexually abused when I was younger, and I still have night terrors about it today. Right? I think the most, and by today I mean recent. Like, I think the last time I had a night terror was probably about a month ago. And so for me, at 37 years old, when I have those night terrors, it didn't happen 20 years ago. It happened last night, or whenever the dream was, or you know what I'm saying? So sometimes I think, let me take off this sweater because it's getting warm in LA, even though it's cold outside. It's warm in my car. Sometimes we have to remember that people are going through things and they're in different stages of it, and we can say we've been delivered. We can say, and listen, there's a difference between being delivered from the incident and being delivered from the hurt and the memories and all that play. Like, you have to be delivered from it all. And unfortunately, most of us never seek out the help, especially in the African American community. And I say that because we are often told, we don't share things. What goes on in our house stays in our house. You understand what I'm saying? And when we grow up with that mentality, a lot of times, even in our adult lives, we don't share things that we need to get off our chest. And we have to start doing that. We have to start taking responsibility for our own healing, even if we can't take responsibility for what happened to us, right? Because if you were beaten, yeah, you could say, well, I made some bad choices in picking a husband. But at the same time, like at this point, in this moment, we got to say, I got to take responsibility to move forward. I got to help myself move forward. And so I just want to give like a few points for getting yourself healed, right? And so number one is knowing that it's not your fault. Now, a lot of people will say, well, if you selected a bad husband and he beat you, then that is your fault. No, he had a responsibility to maintain himself, right? There's nothing my daughter can say to make me beat the crap out of her. And there are times where I'm like, hey, you're going to get a whooping for running in the parking lot because that can get you killed, or, when she's 13, God forbid she forged my signature or something. Those are things that you'll get a whooping for. But if telling someone that they were beat because they were bad is unacceptable. Telling a wife that, she was beat because she, picked a bad husband, he had a responsibility to maintain himself. And that's my point in that. But the first thing is to know that that person had a responsibility to maintain themselves, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to cry. Get it out. I don't know why we have this thing where it's like, well, we can't be emotional about it. We got to be hard. Listen, I grew up with brothers and I grew up with male cousins. I have a few female cousins, but I grew up in a very male-dominated family. And so for years, the only emotion I was comfortable sharing was anger. And in that, I didn't really learn to be vulnerable. And so I've had to, over the years, just kind of learn to be vulnerable with myself, with the people that I love. And it's okay. Go ahead and cry. Make sure that you get that someone who can be a safe place for you. If you don't have that, find it. Sometimes, it's difficult to speak to your pastor or a counselor. I was lucky. I can talk to my pastor about it. I could talk to the ministers at my church about it. Everyone does not have that. So find you a friend. Confess it to your significant other. A lot of us don't even tell the people that we are married to what we've been through. And it really would go far in getting them to understand where we're coming from, having them understand, the emotions that we've been going through. You have to get it out. You have to share it. If you don't, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Another thing that you have to do sometimes is deal with the people who don't believe you. All the time, you hear people say, I don't believe he beat his wife and kids, or I don't believe, it's always someone who's on the outside that doesn't believe what actually happened. But there are times when there are wives who don't believe that their husband sexually abused their children, or, but that's not the reality, or that's their reality, but it's not the truth. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes we have to deal with the people who don't believe us, and in occasions that means just not dealing with them at all. Sometimes it means you have to share that story with them in detail. That's another part of the process of healing, is reliving it mentally in detail, sometimes physically. Listen, I remember the smells. I remember how he smelled. I remember the curtains. Like, there are a lot of things that I remember, and I have to sometimes, I'm gonna tell you, there was one time my boyfriend bought me this orange comforter, and I freaked out seeing it on my bed. And he was just like, okay, exactly what happened here? Right? And it took me like maybe 30 minutes to gather myself, but I was just like, get that off my bed. And it took me a long time, like 30 minutes, to go in there and just say, okay, so let me explain what happened here. When I was molested, this is the color comforter. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we're holding on to stuff, and people who we're close to, who we share intimate space with, have no idea. And we owe it to ourselves to express that, to deal with that, to deal with those people who don't believe us, because we're still holding on. We're still, and it's not that we want to. Sometimes it has a hold of us. Sometimes we want to let it go, and we just don't know how. Sometimes it takes some more time. It takes, more time with God. It takes sharing the story. I'm telling you, every time I can tell my story now without crying, because I have spent time sharing that story with other people and empowering other people through their situation. And it has helped me. And that helped me more than the crying about it. It helped me more than, trying to convince people that it happened. It helped me more than all the other stuff, is sharing the story. And then people would say, well, you're putting your family out there. I don't care. Get healed. I don't care who is embarrassed. If they didn't want to be told on, then they should have lived right. Quit letting people hold you emotionally hostage to their crap because they don't want you to tell your story. Somebody has to be brave, and it may as well be you. Somebody has to help somebody else, and it may as well be you. And I promise you, you will not be disappointed in yourself. The people who are pissed off because you have exposed the family, oh well. Because you have, told on their son, you're in a public platform and you're telling how their son beat the crap out of you, oh well. But we have to start getting the healing that we need. It's mandatory for our growth. It's mandatory for our children's growth. It's mandatory for our marriages. We have to heal from our past, and it takes time, and we got to start that process today, because a lot of our relationships will not live past tomorrow if we don't start today. It is what it is. And unless you're willing to lose it all, you have to be willing to share it all. You have to be willing to expose it all. And I know that makes people uncomfortable, because, what goes on in our house stays in our house is rule number 1. Don't beat your wife is rule 85. Don't molest the kids, rule 342. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we have to start dealing and sharing and allowing ourselves to be emotionally vulnerable and emotionally nude. And if we don't do that, everything else suffers. Another thing that we have to do is get past that moment in this one. Like, everything that you went through, the beatings, the divorce, the lying, the cheating, whatever it is, find a scar on your body. I can find this one. Can you guys see that? Can you guys see that? Okay. I don't even know how I got that scar, but it looks like it hurt, right? And I have burn mark on my knee. I have a scrape on my knee that my daughter pointed out the other night. But the point is that when you do the healing process, you will be able to see the scar, tell people all about it, right? If you've ever touched the stove, you know that you can say, oh, I burned my hand really bad. This is the scar. And you can tell the story. I touched the hot stove, right? We tell it to our kids all the time. I touched the hot stove. It burned. And this is how, this is the results of it. We can give details, right? But 5 years later, the burn doesn't hurt. Right? When we go through the process and we share it and we're exposing and not trying to put people on blast, but you're exposing your own hurt, your own pain. Eventually, even if you can see the scar, even if you can tell the story, it doesn't hurt anymore. And we have to get into a practice of giving ourselves emotionally so that we can stop hurting. If we never stop hurting, it's going to just keep going. We have to be able to heal. And we have to be willing to do the work. After that, we have to be able to forgive. Listen, I forgive my molester. I forgive, the people who I think knew about it. I forgive it all, not because they're worthy, but because I am. Because I deserve to be able to live my life, play full out, and not have this burden of being vindictive or revengeful or, all that other stuff that comes with the baggage that comes with hurting. I deserve to unleash, to unpack, to do what I need to do for me. And so forgiveness for me is part of that. It means that I go, you know what? Now, hear me though. I'm not going to the family function if you're there. And that doesn't mean I'm not healed. I am going to protect my daughter and warn her and take precautions to be sure that she doesn't go through what I went through. That does not mean that I am not healed. It means that I believe that I deserve enough and she deserves enough to keep pushing forward and to keep ourselves, what's the word? Informed and protected enough, so that it's not an issue. If I can protect my daughter from going through that, Lord knows I will. And a lot of us, we let people tell us we're not healed because we won't let the very child or our children go with such and such who abused us in whatever form it was. Some of us, it's not even about physical or sexual abuse. Some of us were just mentally abused, emotionally abused. And I don't say just meaning that it's insignificant. I say just as in it may not have impacted you as much, but you still don't send your kids with the same person that told you you were an idiot every day of your life, who cussed you out, who called you names. I deal with teenagers and some of their parents call them the worst things. I don't care if you're joking with her or not. You don't call your daughter the B word under any circumstances. Never. And so we have to deal with those types of things. And so we have to be able to get to a place where we can go in peace and forgive and let go of the anger. And then the next thing that we have to do is channel our aggression wisely. Some of us are, repeating the cycle of abuse, beating on our kids or, giving our husbands hell or giving our wives drama. And really what it is that we've never channeled the aggression. Some of you just need to really just take a kickboxing class. Some of us need to do that or, color or something. Like we have to channel that energy so that we're not repeating the cycle. We have to make sure. They say that a good portion of people who are sexually abused end up sexually abusing someone else. And I think that can definitely be true because you have to deal with what's inside of you. You have to deal with that anger. You have to deal with that pain. You have to move forward. But it's a process. And then some of us need to remember that we have to start from today. Whatever happened in the past, find the scar. Figure out why it still hurts, right? People say that they've had limbs cut off and they can still feel it, or it's not even there and it's still painful because it's the memory, it's the cells remembering that there was something there. It's the cells remembering that something was cut off. And every now and then the emotional impact of it all is overwhelming. But by God's stripes, we are healed. By the very stripes that Jesus took, we are healed. And I'm not here to tell you who you should look to for that. I look to Jesus, and that is my saving grace. And if that's not yours, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you who yours should be. I'm just saying who mine is, not mine's. I hate when people say that, mine's. But by his stripes, I am healed. He took a stripe for everything that I went through, whether it was with, my molester, whether it was with bad relationships, whether it was with bad parenting moments at the hands of my parents, whether it was with, bad moments with my brothers. I'm a little sister, I was a tattletale. So, I got beat up a couple of times. It is life. But we have to be able to deal and move forward. And so, April, if you're watching the Scope, thank you for your transparency. Thank you. Jennifer called me earlier and I was like in full tears listening to your call. So I just want to thank you for being transparent and for being authentic and for sharing your story, and for sharing that nugget that we are responsible for ourselves. We can't wait on the Savior. If you're waiting for someone to tell you of a good counselor, you will be waiting for a long time. Sometimes you just have to dive into you. And it's okay to take time to fix you, to heal you, to deal with you. And you don't get to punk out just because you had it rough. You have to get resilient. You have to tell your story. You have to move forward. I am so grateful for the people who were in my life from then to now who have said, I got you. I believe you. I'm going to help you. Whatever the case, even if they didn't know what to do. Because in some cases, folks don't know what to do. But if they took the time, if they did it, if they just said, hey, I'm going to just sit on the phone with you while you cry, whatever the case may be, take the time to get to you, to fix you, to heal you, so that we can move forward and start healing the world. The world needs a healing. We have got to start the process with ourselves so that we can show up for the people who will never be able to. Some people are far too damaged to start the process, and they need you to spin the wheel. They need you to show up for them on their behalf. And you can't do that if you don't get healed. I'm going to go because I don't want to cry. I don't like crying on Periscope. I don't like crying. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this scope helps someone. Again, I'm Kiana Shaw, CEO of Lead Hership Academy and Executive Director of Village of Truth. And yeah, you can email me, CoachKiana@gmail.com. You can, yeah, I'm emotional. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.